I'm going to call the March 22nd, 2018 Town Council meeting to order. Please stand and pledge the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We do not have any public comment, but I would like a moment of silence for Mary Lard. She's 97 years old. She lived on Pine Ridge, I think. Pine Tree. A very independent woman. 97 years old, lived in a house that many of us would be surprised are in Forster. So just a moment of silence for her. Thank you. Moving on, payroll warrant number 36.
Make a motion to accept payroll warrant number 36 in the amount of $38,622.27.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on to payroll warrant number 37.
Make a motion to accept payroll warrant number 37 in the amount of $38,278.06.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on to general warrant number 18.
Make a motion to accept general warrant number 18 in the amount of $79,837.00.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on to general warrant number 18A.
I make a motion we pay general warrant 18A in the amount of $316.67.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on to monthly reports for the month of February.
Make a motion to accept monthly reports for February for Building Zoning Department, Human Services, Police Department, Rhode Island Resource Recovery, and Tax Assessment.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on to old business. Financial statements and standards, policies and procedures for non-town entities receiving appropriations.
Well, I was curious about this because it had been on, this topic's been going on for a year.
Over a
All
year.
that.
More than that.
More than that.
So it came on, it was discussed briefly, it was sent back out. That was February. It floated around on future agenda items for a while, and I'm just curious of where
You still don't have an answer.
we stand and why.
We met, Kelly and I met with one of the chiefs of one of the departments that have not given us everything that we've asked for. And Kelly, did you get anything more? They were meeting again this week. Did they meet with you or did they?
He hasn't met with me. He was going to ask, Gordy Breeden is from South Gloucester.
Yeah.
He was going to ask his finance people to meet with me, and then he was going to bring it back to his group. But I think it was a constructive conversation.
Okay, so you give me a timeline? Yeah.
He said this week or next week.
Okay.
He did meet with, he was meeting with his financial committee this week, I think it was Wednesday night. So, and he could not make it tonight.
And he said he would, he asked if I would be available to meet with them one day next week. So I don't know what day that would be.
So this will be on future agenda items.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we will continue with that.
Information.
Okay. Is that good?
Well, I wanted, yeah, I just curious as some status, and I haven't heard anything. Don't think it's come before us.
So should we have Kelly call him and check in?
But I'm sure he's going to get back to it because he was meeting Wednesday night.
No,
Yes.
And then-
I've discussed with Kelly what the state law is on this, and as well as the deciding board. It's fairly clear. It's just a matter of how you want to handle it internally. Every town is different with volunteer fire companies. It's how you want to handle the situation.
Right, so, I mean, he
It's
had
going to affect our
Yes.
If
Well,
they don't give us the
they-
information, it's gonna affect our audit.
They know that we're trying to work something out, but yes, eventually it's gonna be commented on and
And I can speak on that, being involved for many years, this started back, actually, when it first started, you have an audit, they come in and they look at certain things, and I try to explain it like 9001, 9002, you know, when you have companies that have to meet that standard, it's a continuing improvement. And when the audit company comes in, they'll state things for sake of words, significant deficiencies in accounting, and they'll bring the town and the treasurer, who's basically responsible, it's her responsibility. And then the following years, one of the first things they do when they look at the audit is, what have you done to continually improve? And then look at back on the previous year, what was reported, and then you have to explain what you've done. So it kind of puts the town and the treasurer in an unfortunate position when the audit is flagging this stuff and it goes on and on for several years and nothing's getting done. It makes her look bad and it makes this council look bad. The unfortunate situation is she has to have this information, and it's unfortunately puts the council in the position, because it's our job to go to these departments and try and find a solution to that, and it is a tough road to hoe when you're dealing with volunteer fire departments. So you've got to do it lightly, and I think that's what we're doing, and hopefully we'll come to a conclusion and we can solve the problem that we have on our audits. Because you know those plaques you get, Kelly gets and the town gets for great auditing every year, they go by year by year by year, those things stop coming when you don't start looking at the previous year's discussions and what needs to be improved. So I think we're moving in the right direction. I don't think it's going to be dropped, and it shouldn't be dropped. And hopefully that helps explain things a little bit where the council is moving forward.
Thank you. Moving on to early voting resolution. We do have a visitor, actually he contacted us via our board of canvassers for early voting resolution, and it's Rob Rock. So you have in your packet the resolution, but he's here to explain a little bit more about that.
Yes, good evening, Madam President, members of the council, residents of Foster. My name is Rob Rock. I am the Director of Elections for the Secretary of State's office. And I'm here tonight to talk a little bit about our legislation that we've put forth now for 3 years in a row regarding early voting. I believe the resolution in your packet is from the town of Gloucester. Is that accurate?
Yes.
We were in Gloucester a few weeks ago where they unanimously supported our legislation. And basically, I just want to talk a little bit about what our legislation would do as opposed to what currently happens today. So today, currently, anytime a voter within 20 days of an election wants to vote, they can go into Foster Town Hall. They can fill out a mail ballot application. That information is entered into the computer by Bob or Heidi or Susan. The voter is given a ballot. The voter votes the ballot. They put it into an envelope. They seal the envelope, and they leave the envelope with the town clerk's office. The town clerk's office then needs to hand deliver those ballots to the Board of Elections at some point before Election Day, so those votes can be counted. So our bill, the way we would change it is we'd make the process much more streamlined, not only for voters, but also for town staff. So essentially what our bill would do is, instead of a voter coming in and filling out an application, the voter's going to walk into town hall, same 20-day window, they're going to show their ID, it's going to be scanned into the electronic poll book, the iPad that is going to be at town hall, the name's going to pop up within 10 seconds, the voter's going to sign the iPad, the voter's going to be given their ballot, they're going to vote their ballot, and they're going to slide it into a voting machine that'll be at town hall. So there's no more paper, there's no more witnessing of envelopes, there's no more signing of the envelopes by the town clerk or the voter, and there's no need to deliver the ballots to the Board of Elections before the election, because they're going to be slid into the machine right then and there on the spot, right at town hall. Now, not only does the process is it streamlined for voters and for town staff, but it also is going to ease the stresses on Election Day. With more people casting a ballot before Election Day, that means there are going to be less lines at the polling place, less wear and tear on the machines of the polling place. Also, it's going to increase voter confidence. So right now, when the voter votes their ballot and leaves it at the town clerk's office, I can tell you with certainty that that ballot's going to count. But from a voter's perspective, I think it'd be easier for the voter to slide it right into the machine, know that their vote's going to be counted, they're going to see the counter increase by 1 on the machine, and they're going to have more confidence that their vote's going to count. I know for a fact that their vote's going to count anyway, even when they vote by mail. But from a voter's perspective, I think you increase voter confidence by having the ballot go into a machine as opposed to into an envelope. 34 states plus the District of Columbia already have some sort of early voting. You've got, it's a bipartisan situation. There are Republican states like Texas and Georgia and Tennessee and Arkansas that have early voting. And there are, what we call blue states like California, Massachusetts, Maryland that also have early voting. So it's a concept that is catching on across the country. As a matter of fact, 46% of the people cast their ballot before Election Day in 2016 across the country. So nearly half the country voted before Election Day, because really that's the way we live our lives now, right? I mean, we're not hard pressed to say that between 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. on a random Tuesday every other year that you may not be able to get to your polling place. So to be able to have the option to show up on the 20 days before an election, I think gives voters more convenience. There's no studies that show this increases voter turnout. This isn't going to bring more people out to vote, although we'd like that. This is just making it easier for people to vote, making it more convenient, because that's the way we live our lives today. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. I know, I'm sure there are a couple questions. I'd love to answer them.
I have a question. You say 20 days, is that 20 consecutive days, so it includes weekends?
So yes and no. So it's not 20 consecutive days. It's the 20. It starts on the 20th day before the election, and it's only during business hours up until the weekend before the election, and it would be just the Saturday and Sunday before the election. And it would be from 12 to 4 on the Saturday and 12 to 4 on the Sunday. And the reason why the Secretary feels strongly about that is because many people who may work during the day are unable to get to town hall during normal business hours. So we feel it's important to allow someone the ability to come when it's probably going to be more convenient for them on the weekend. But it's only the weekend before. So it starts on the 20th day before, business hours only up until the weekend before, which it would include 12 to 4 on the Saturday and Sunday before.
Then we have to have it open and manned.
Yes, ma'am.
Right.
Correct.
And that, as I mentioned, that was my concern.
Understood. And so what, just one final thing I want to mention regarding that is that the Board of Elections, which is a separate office than us, they are going to oversee, they oversee Election Day, and they are going to convene, as it states right in the bill, an advisory committee made up of mostly city and town election officials, local election officials, because we realized that there are some changes for local election officials and local staff, and we want to make sure they have a seat at the table when implementing the early voting legislation. Sir?
Several concerns. The seat at the table, we're just Forster. There'll be a lot more seats in the inner cities that'll probably drown out what Forster has. There was a meeting on this the other day, correct? A public meeting or somewhere?
There was a hearing at the State House, yes.
And the League of Cities and Towns weighed in.
The League of Cities and Towns, separate from the Clerks Association.
Correct.
Yes.
It's my understanding from what I've heard, they're now for this, and a couple of concerns are cost analysis were not done. There may be costs that impact the taxpayers because of this. For example, we only have our very limited canvases that are in, and there's no really set hours, so it's difficult to nail it down. And we only work 4 days a week at the town hall. It's closed every Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So those are concerns. The League of Cities and Towns requested fiscal analysis done. It wasn't done. Another concern that I have, let's say I go in and I vote 20 days ahead of time. As a person that I'm voting for, something happens. It hits the papers. Some kind of a bad news. I can't take my vote back. Something immoral or something comes out. And a lot of this stuff does not come out 20 days before. A lot of it is held back for several days before for specific reasons. But a lot of the stuff at the end of the day, when you get down to right to the end of the elections, when the really nuts and bolts start happening, you get involved and you get information going, and there's a lot of stuff that comes out that anybody who voted 20 days earlier, that's it, they can't rescind their vote. So that's another reason I'm probably going to be voting against this. I think it's a little early. Again, at an election poll, and I'm not saying it would happen in this town, but at a polling place, you have border canvassers, you've got moderators, there's a chalk line, there's officers there. Nobody can interfere with anybody going in the building, holding the pins or nothing like that, within 50 feet of the building. You have this situation where, you know, you may get into the town hall and you may inadvertently, some people are swaying other people's decisions behind the counter for their personal agenda to help. That really doesn't happen on a polling day because it's really seen and controlled. So at this point, I'm not happy with this, and I've also told other people to ask questions, and I will not be supporting this resolution.
Understood. If I may address just the concerns, if I hope I remember correctly. So the first one is the cost analysis. So the league does have concerns. The reason why the cost analysis is a little bit tricky is because it's going to depend on how the town sets it up. And so the seat at the table with the local city and town clerks association is important because everyone's opinions and every size town is going to be taken into account as the board implements this process, which goes to your third point about the way the polling place is set up. So that's why it's very important that we put that in the legislation so that everybody had a seat at the table. Just because there are only four of the 7 spots on the advisory committees for the cities and towns, it's open up to the public and every city and town is able to weigh in. So for example, we were in the town of Westerly earlier this week, and the way Westerly envisions it is that they don't see that there's going to be a cost impact in the negative. So with the electronic poll books that we have, they think they're going to save money on the other end when election history is imported into the central voter registration system, something that used to take them about 2 weeks to do, and now it's going to take them literally 10 minutes because of the technology that we have. So it does depend on the town. I'm not saying that Foster wouldn't have a financial impact, but we do think that there's going to be ways to keep the cost down on this initiative. Regarding the 20-day, you've cast your ballot and then something may happen. Our opinion is that we just want to leave it up to the voter. We understand that if the voter wants to vote on the 20th day before the election, that's their prerogative, and when they do that, they do run the risk of perhaps something happening to a candidate after they cast their ballot. We just want to provide that voter with the opportunity to make that decision on their own. And also, it's even equally as likely that on the day after the election, something could come out about a candidate that someone supported, and by then it's too late anyway. So we just want to give the voter the opportunity to make that decision, and they still have the ability to wait until Election Day. We're not taking that away. We're just offering more of an opportunity for voters who may not be able to go to the polls on Election Day.
I have 2 more other points that I didn't bring up. One is I believe some of this was brought forward because of the heavy lines at certain polling places. This was stated that possibly this might alleviate some of that. We don't have that problem in Foster, so it's kind of an action that's being caused somewhere else that will affect us. That's one thing. And the other thing that I think is very important, that knowing how to run for office, you have a declaration time at the very end of June, 27th, 29th, or in that area. Then you have paperwork, signatures. You got, let's say a legislative office is 100 signatures. You've got a 10-day period to do that. You got to get your signatures in. Now, here's a very important part. We all know many people run for office again and again and again, and the term limits is basically somebody says, you know what, the term limits is you get them voted out. But here's the unfortunate part by doing this. An incumbent does have a leg up, and I can speak from that from experience. But somebody who's not an incumbent, and they want to primary somebody in the same, whether it be Democrat or Republican, there's a very short window. The way it exists now, because a primary is in September. General elections is the first Tuesday in November. By backing up the early voting date, that would apply for primaries also, I'm assuming.
Yes, sir.
So backing up that 20 days of primary, you're taking somebody who's possibly running against an entrenched incumbent, that his time to run for office and get his voice out to say, here's what I stand for, you're reducing that by 20 days on the people that want to vote early. And that gives the upper hand to the incumbent on these challenges that are primaried out. That is one of the major reasons that I wanted to bring that up last, and I forgot to do it, but that's one of the major reasons that I will not support this.
So that's valid. I think one thing to remember is that if our bill doesn't pass, people are still going to be able to vote on the 20th day before an election and up until the day before the election. So our bill has no bearing on the fact that someone's going to be able to cast a ballot on the 20th day before an election. Today, in 2016, 2014, and our bill is going to, if it were to pass, is going to go into effect in 2019. So it's not even in effect for 2018. But even in 2018, on the 20th day before an election, someone is able to walk into Foster Town Hall and they're going to be able to cast their ballot. The only difference is that it's going to go into an envelope instead of into a voting machine. So our bill isn't creating a 20-day window. We're just simply sticking with what's already in place and we're making the process more beneficial for voters and for town staff.
And to add on that, I don't really agree with that process either, because it rules the same thing. So
Understood.
I agree, I disagree with this one and the one that's existing.
Yeah, I just want to make it clear that our bill isn't creating this 20-day window, it's keeping with what we have today.
So the only difference would be that we would be paying staff to be there on that Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Is that right?
Well, so
Or do they have to be there every Friday?
No, so our bill says that it's Monday through Friday during normal business hours. So the way I understand that would be the town of Foster is not open on Friday, so it's not, just like, I think the town of Burrville, they are open until 7 on Thursdays and close at 12 on Friday. So until 7 on Thursday, people can vote, and not on Friday. So to answer your question, the only difference, I guess, from a staffing point of view would be, yes, the Saturday and Sunday, but the process would be much more streamlined, and I would argue that your town staff would be freed up to do other things that they would normally be bogged down with when filling out the paper under the current process.
But unfortunately, in this town, our staffing aren't set hours on the board of canvassers. They joggle around and come in at different times, so it's not like, hey, I'm gonna come in because town hall is open from this hour to this hour. Our board of canvassers are in and out at different times and don't have set hours.
But voters are able to come in Monday through Thursday at any time, and their service and are able to cast a ballot, whether the board of canvassers are in or not.
But it's a workload on the current employees that are bogged down with their existing work.
Correct, so I would argue that this process would free up your town staff, because the process is gonna be much easier, because again, currently, someone is gonna be able to go in and vote using that paper process, which I argue is gonna bog down your town staff. Under our bill, it would create more time for your town staff to do other work, is how I see it.
My only
Well,
concern
before we go any further, could we have a motion?
I will
We're
make
having a
a,
lot of discussion here.
in the affirmative, I will make a motion to support the resolution presented 2018-02 with Senate Bill number 2419, related to implementation of in-person early voting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Now, further discussion. Go ahead, Sharon.
My only concern is staffing that Saturday and Sunday before the cost of, additional cost to the town. As far as, ease, and I think this is a much more efficient way of doing it than that way. It's recorded, it's on, you have a machine in there, I applaud that idea.
My question would be, where would the machine be stored? We're a small town hall. Where is that going to be stored, where people can have their privacy and you've got it blocked off? I mean, I'm trying to think here.
Maybe the canvass's office.
Bobby, your opinion on this?
I see both sides of it. I have a question before I speak. Can I ask a quick question to Rob? I wanted to know if the candidates are going to still be able to hold signs out in front of the town hall during that 20-day period.
So that would be something that the Board of Elections, in their implementation, the rules and regulations, how they define how this is going to work, that would be something that would be, I just don't know the answer to that currently. I mean, I can't imagine that, I mean, first of all, I don't know what the laws are in Foster regarding signage. You can't have signs on public property, I would imagine. I don't know if that's accurate. So I mean, those laws wouldn't change. But as far as how that would work to your concern, sir, about the 50-foot and all of that stuff, I mean, I think it's going to be, you know, a normal business hour type situation for most of the 20 days, where I don't know if currently candidates would campaign outside when someone walks in to vote the in-person mail ballot. I don't think they do, but it's something that will be worked out in the rules and regulations.
Okay. Initially, I was for it. I'm leaning against it. I'm going back and forth as I listen to Rob. I'm picking up a few things. I'm liking it. I'm disliking it. I'm with Mr. Rogers on a lot of it. As far as the part about I didn't like the old system, so changing the old system to a new system. I wish that they'd fix the old system, in my opinion, but that's too late. And you made a good point about now that they're going to be able to. I don't know if people realize now they're going to have to show an ID, whereas during the emergency ballots phase they didn't have to show a photo ID. And now they have to. But with that, I would have fixed the old problem and made them show an ID with the emergency ballot system as well. So I don't know. I don't really like the new system. I didn't like the old system. I like having the iPad. poll hats. I like having those. On that flip side, I like that. On the other side, Heidi, you're in there, and we're gonna get paid whether we go in there, or we don't go in there, if we go on a weekend or a weekday. So we're gonna get paid the same, no matter if we do emergency ballots or if we do these, this new system. Another little concern of mine is that they're gonna do away with the emergency ballot system. That whole system's going out the window. There's not gonna be any more emergency ballot system for people that are in nursing homes and things like that, right? So there's not gonna be any.
That's not true. So,
It's not the wording, I mean, the wording's not gonna be out there, but people will know, you know, you can come in and vote if, under the old emergency system, if you have an emergency, like you're in a nursing home, or you can't get out of bed, or something like that, correct? They're gonna name it early voting and stop calling it an emergency ballot?
No, so the emergency ballot process is still gonna be in place for situations like that. If someone, you know, God forbid, were to break their leg, or they go into the hospital a week before an election, what would happen is they would find somebody, hopefully a family member or a friend, to be able to come to town hall and be able to pick up a ballot, sign it out. The person's gonna authorize an individual to pick up their ballot, bring it to them in the hospital, and then they'd be able to vote it and get it back to the Board of Elections.
So that's not
That
going away.
absolutely is not gonna change,
Okay.
no.
Gotcha.
And if I just may, to your question, ma'am, about where would the machine go? You know, currently, the town clerk's office needs to secure those voted ballots that are in the envelopes at some sort of locked up situation. I'm not sure what it is in Foster, but I'm sure they're locked up in some room every night. When someone comes in and votes during the emergency mail ballot, they're locked somewhere. So the machine would just need to be locked, you know, wherever that would be now. Because, you know, I would argue that the voted ballots are more secure inside the voting machine than they are inside these envelopes.
I agree.
Right, so it's going to be a more secure process for, I would argue, the integrity of the election, because you're in a locked, sealed box, as opposed to an envelope, which, again, I know are not tampered with and they're locked up here, but just from a voting standpoint and a confidence standpoint, I think voters would be much more likely to have more confidence in the process of being in a machine as opposed to an envelope.
So down the road, do you foresee voters swamping the town hall and not going to the polls on election day?
Here's my fear. My fear is that that happens without this bill passing. Because what's going to happen is more and more people are voting before elections every year, every election cycle. And if this bill doesn't pass, you're going to be stuck with that process of the voter's going to fill out the application, you're going to have to enter that into the CVRS, you're going to have to witness the envelope, you're going to have to drive the envelopes down, and I think more and more people are going to take advantage of this 20-day period. So I think you're going to get swamped if this bill doesn't pass as time goes on, right? I don't think in 2018 there's going to be an issue, but more and more people, and this is a trend across the country. 46% of the people are casting ballots before an election. I really think that before long, most people are going to be voting early. Now, you know, I don't know the demographics in Foster and whether people like going to the polls or like voting early, but I think as time goes on, more and more people are going to be casting a ballot before election day. And I just would rather have it be a more streamlined process. And yes, you've got the weekends, but I would argue that your staff is going to be much less burdened by this process than they are with what's currently in place.
My opinion is it's fraught for abuse and not enough oversight, as you see at the polling places.
Well, so, I also would argue that the town staff poll workers do a great job. I'm sure there are many poll workers here. They get trained 3 hours, 3 weeks before an election. It's tough to be able to expect poll workers to remember everything. And now we're going to have people voting in front of election officials. People who are trained full-time, the town clerk's office, the board of canvassers, that know more about elections than most people, and they're going to be the ones overseeing the people coming in to vote during the early voting period. So, and that's another good point about, usually if something were to happen at a poll on election day, if you show up to vote and the person's name's not in the voting booth, not in the poll list, they got to vote a provisional ballot. It may create a line. There's a whole lot of havoc. Where if they vote early at Town Hall has access to the voter registration database right at their fingertips. And they can look up the voter and say, hey, what's going on here? They can fix any sort of error that may be on the voting list right then and there on the spot, something that poll workers can't do because they don't have the resources at the Payne School or at wherever else. So it does eliminate or reduce drastically the number of errors that could occur on election day.
Bobby, how many early votes do we get, do you know?
I think emergency ballots, we had like 79 or something like that, and that was the highest. But again, because like mail ballots, emergency ballots, the state changed the rules. Anybody can get one now. You don't have, you can just check off the section that says other. So when they changed that, scenario, that's when the rise went up. That's when 46% of the people in the United States
Correct.
vote from home or other than the polling place now.
And that number's gonna keep going up. Right, that number's gonna keep going up because I tell you, like myself personally, I usually vote by mail because I can't vote on election day because we're tied up on election day. I would much rather go to my city hall in East Providence on the 15th day before the election when I get an hour at lunch, and I'd rather vote that ballot because I know that it's gonna go into a machine and I know that I'm not gonna have to worry about showing up on election day. So these numbers.
You're sure that, you mean the ballot you send in, you mail in? You're confident that mail is gonna make it there, and you're confident that's gonna make it into the machine?
Well, I'm saying that if our bill were to pass, I would say, I'm gonna take an hour during lunch on the 15th day before the election, I'm gonna drive to East Providence City Hall, and I'm gonna vote then, because I know that I'm gonna be tied up on election.
Oh, I see. I thought you were confident.
And voters may not, let's face it, voters may not know what they're gonna be doing on election day. We'd like to think that voting is gonna be a #1 priority, but let's face it, people have 2 and 3 jobs, they've got kids, they've got things going on that it makes it very difficult. I mean, my boss is a perfect example. She's got 3 daughters, and she talks about the time where she had to scramble to get to the polling place because, she's got to bring this kid to that practice and pick up this kid from the friend's house. And so to be able to have a little more leeway to be able to go to her town hall when she feels it convenient, I think is helpful for her. And I think that's the way a lot of us live our lives today. We're busy people. Things have changed from when election day used to be on the Tuesday because that's when the farmers brought their crops into town, and it was just the easiest time to do it. So it's just things have changed, and we're trying to keep up with the times, and we're trying to just make it as convenient and as easy as possible for people to cast a ballot.
This is one of the last farming communities in the state. They haven't been bringing the produce to town south.
Well, that's why it's a Tuesday.
I'm not gonna give you that much credit for that.
No, that's why it's a Tuesday, though. That's originally why it was a Tuesday.
I can see the positive, but my concern is those weekends and tying up.
It's only 1 week.
It's only
That's
one
right.
weekend,
That's
those
correct.
2 days. And I think it's taking up a lot. As Gordon mentioned, our Board of Canvassers don't have set times. So for them to be in and out, I'm not sure that's the best for our town.
I just have a question. We're one of the few towns where the town clerk runs for her position. And this, I'm assuming, would basically knock her out of having anything to do
No.
with someone, no?
No, the town, the way the structure of the town's set up, I think there are 9 towns where town clerks run for office, or 8 or 9. And as part of the job description for the town clerk is to oversee elections. And so that's not gonna change. There are, I know Bristol's got an elected clerk, a few other towns, I'm sure Susan, you can name them quicker than I can. But Situate, Foster, I mean, and part of the job description is to oversee elections, and that's not gonna change.
And the elected clerks they're not nonpartisan, like we have nonpartisan school committee members there. They're pushed and elected by political parties.
Most of them, yes.
So, again, it's just, there's too many places where opinions can be interjected and changed. And again, I can't stress enough about the primaries. 20 days, you're taking somebody who was trying to take out an incumbent and he's primarying them, and that's how you do it. If you're gonna run for political office, most of the time you're gonna run against an incumbent, which means you're gonna create a primary to go against that incumbent. And this benefits the incumbent tremendously with the 20 days. So I love new people coming up and running for office and have this affect them. That's the one it affects the most.
Yeah, so just to your first point, as far as the town clerks that doesn't change from today. So whether this bill passes, the town clerk is still going to oversee elections. He or she is still going to be a Democrat or a Republican. And then also on a side note, which there's no correlation between these two, I want to make that very clear, but we have also introduced a bill that would move the primary to August. Move the primary up to August. There's a bill that the Secretary has introduced as well.
That makes it even shorter.
It makes it longer.
The primaries are in September, right?
Right, so we're going to move it to August. So it would make it a longer time to campaign.
But after you win the primary, it makes it a longer time. Not by the time you declare to run for office and you are in a primary. It actually makes it shorter. Your declaration date's the end of June.
But that's not tonight's topic.
It is because this takes the 20 days into account.
Right.
Yeah, but the declaration period is also moved.
Oh,
It's gonna move up a month.
Right.
Move
Do
back.
we have any further discussion?
Just to Gordon's
Because it's paperwork.
20 days either way, either it stays the way it is or it
Correct.
changes, it's still gonna be 20 days.
This bill, yeah, this bill
They
is
can
not
vote.
creating a 20-day, it's keeping the current process in place. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sabari.
Any further, yes, Mr.
You
Savati?
know, I don't know why.
Be nice.
Yeah, you want to make me short when you let this go on that long. Foster always has to be different, and this is why nobody pays attention to us. It's the same 20 days.
I just said
All
that.
right? A lot of crap.
Thank you. Anyone
I
else?
just said that.
And- But I want to help.
Any other further discussion? Hearing none, we have a motion to accept this resolution, and it has been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
Do I agree too, is that what it was?
Yep.
Did you? I didn't hear you. Did you?
Aye.
Oh, he said aye, so it's 3-2.
So it passes.
Yes. Moving on. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
Thank you for having us, we appreciate it, thank you so
Thank
much
you,
for
thank you.
having us.
If you want to leave now, you
Yeah, save yourself.
Mr. Savazio will show you to your car. Next on our agenda is appointment of interview committee, and this is in regards to the chief's position.
Okay.
Is there anything that,
All right, what's my question?
I'm
We're
waiting.
gonna appoint a committee to interview who?
That,
We seem to be missing a step.
I agree. So, it would be to, I believe that the committee would determine how to proceed further. Thank you.
And either way, I think we're gonna be meeting the committee, so, get some suggestions out, if we're gonna have a committee or not. I mean,
Yes.
I don't have a problem with the committee, it's I mean, we have a countdown here of what, April
13th.
13th. So by April 13th, and it's 3 weeks till the next meeting, our next meeting, I believe.
But we have a meeting next week, we have a public hearing next week, which we could do something at.
No, I'm saying, we don't have any candidates,
No,
so if, we might have to stir up some candidates,
I think that's why Denise wanted to appoint a committee
and the committee's gonna do what?
to do it.
Stir up.
stir up.
Send out an advertisement.
yeah, it's a little.
So we're gonna form a committee,
Responsibility to
we want
find
to form a
out.
committee
To
to do what? To put
Find
advertisements on?
find out.
Find out.
That's, isn't that what?
Candidate.
That's what advertising for, or whatever.
Well, you can, the council can put out an ad, and then you can have the committee going.
Or, the chief's got his hands up.
Chief, yes.
I think the council just needs to decide, are they gonna hire from within or put it out to, advertise? So that's your decision tonight. It's
That's not on
You
the
don't
agenda.
have to advertise.
You don't have
Right,
to
you don't have to advertise, it's been done before multiple times, including myself. So,
So
and
maybe
then
we should answer that
decide
question on the next agenda.
to interview.
Why don't we do it tonight, we're talking about it.
You can appoint an interim.
Yeah.
As you go through, as you go through the entire process.
So you want a posting of position?
No.
What,
I think we should
what
go
did you decide?
internally.
Put it on the agenda, next agenda.
Decide if we're gonna possibly hire within or go up, and then that will narrow down the direction we're gonna go.
Well,
Okay.
We might not have to advertise.
shouldn't it, well,
Will we not do that tonight?
It's not on the
It's
agenda.
not on the agenda.
Can't do it tonight, it's not on the agenda.
so are we gonna go forward and answer one question or the other? We're gonna start with internal, and then if we don't have a,
Let's put it on the agenda, the next agenda, and we'll decide what we're gonna do. Can't talk about it now.
When are we gonna meet again, next Thursday?
Next Thursday, we have a public hearing. So. Yes. So that would be, but we could look at who we would like to have on the interview committee.
Well,
Right now, we can.
I think right now, we can
Right.
probably come up with suggestions on the interview committee, and either way, that committee is gonna look at applicants, whether we decide to put it out or in-house, so,
I'd like to be on the committee.
all right, so,
Everybody's gonna wanna be on the
I
committee.
think the council.
I don't wanna be on the
The
committee,
whole committee?
so, I'd like to suggest, you want me to make it in the form of a motion?
Sure.
To appoint the chief of police, a possible, at his discretion, a neighboring or a local police chief other than our chief, to sit down, the reason why, and I'll explain why in a minute, and a council member. And I think at that point, they can come forward, maybe, would you like to be on? No? So I think we keep it at that,
I was, well, go ahead.
or two council members?
You can have two, you
No,
just
I'll
can't have
wait.
three. You can have two council members, but not three.
Two council members, the chief, and another area police chief. We can amend it from there, but that'll be my motion, two council.
Second.
With that, just, if I could add, maybe with that type of important job, the council president should probably be on that committee.
And the liaison.
Right?
Who seconded? I didn't hear the.
I did.
And the reason why I bring it up that way, because I remember some things like we did with DPW on putting the foreman in. We actually had the DPW director, and we had the director from another town, and there were set questions, they were all asked equally, and kind of, scored them in that manner, so it's a fair setup, so. Whether it be we're going out or hiring within, I think that committee can handle both those issues.
Just a suggestion to break any ties, because if the committee has any power, it should be an odd number.
Yes, that right now it would be 4. I have gotten a couple of phone calls from citizens asking if any private citizens were going to be on the committee. I said it was discussion tonight.
I personally don't agree with citizens, because number one, the chief works at the pleasure of the council knows what it expects from the chief, and the chiefs know what the job entails or pertains to. I'm not saying there aren't citizens out there that do that, but I personally wouldn't agree with it. If it's a tie-breaking issue, I would recommend the human resources person, as Kelly, to address the tie-breaking issue, and that she's the treasurer, because there may be salary recommendations and stuff that were brought up, so I would like to.
Is this an appointment of committee?
Yes.
Yes.
We're appointed in a committee. What is the committee going to be, the appointee?
No, they're going to bring forward a recommendation for the council.
Recommendations to
The
the
committee
council.
does not have the authority.
No, they don't have the
They'll
authority.
want to bring one or
Right.
two people, whatever, to you.
I would like to add Kelly as the fifth one, but my motion would have to be amended to include that. I don't think I can amend my own motion.
Right, good. No, they would make recommendations, yes. So, okay. But I do want you to know that I was, and I said that I would bring it forward tonight,
Yeah.
because it was
No, I agree.
discussed.
It's something we have to get through, and I think this is one way of getting that set up. So when we figure out which direction we're gonna go, the committee's already set up, and the chief can start working on figuring out who he's gonna call in as a local police chief.
So the motion is to have the chief, another local chief, which would be at the recommendation of Chief Zeal,
Correct. 2
council members, the council president being one, and Ms. Hawes volunteered herself. as
I'll amend
liaison.
the motion to include the town treasurer or the HR.
Okay,
Second.
okay. So that's amended by Chris. Any further discussion? Mrs. Ryder?
I would say maybe, I don't know, 10 or 12 years ago, for 1 or 2 election periods, there was an interview committee for every position in town following the election. And I know they had set up criteria for every department, and I didn't know of, just a starting point. I'm sure there were checklists that are somewhere. Don't ask me where.
That's the key.
I'll
So,
review for you who they hired, that committee.
I'm sorry, what?
I'll review for you who that committee hired.
It's okay, you already know.
Yes,
That's
okay.
fine, thank you. All right, so we have an amended motion to add Kelly. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on to the main motion, we have a main motion that the chief, a local chief at the discretion of Chief Zeal, and 2 council members. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And those council members
Cheryl Hawes and Denise DeFranco. Thank you. Let us know who you think should be.
And again, just to remind, I think what we said, time is of the essence, so.
Yes.
Again, that might be, again, just
You don't have to keep reminding.
just as a suggestion, it might even be a special meeting,
Yep, but we are gonna put it on next.
Yes, it's going to be on next Thursday's agenda as to what, if we're going to post or not. Have it advertised. Okay. Moving on, Hemlock Ridge. Mrs. Fennessy had approached Mr. Lohr and myself regarding the Hemlock Bridge. We know it's been before the councils many times. We do have pictures here. Mrs. Fennessy, yes, it's all different stuff. Mrs. Fennessy, would you like to start, or?
I'd like to start.
Go ahead.
Gordon mentioned, Mr. Rogers mentioned that I have not appeared in front of this council for far too long to complain about it. But he did say something at last council meeting that struck home to me. In reference to the Mill Road junkyard, he said that people who buy a house on Mill Road were fully aware of a junkyard because it had been there forever. So they had no reason to complain or to say that their property lost value because it was a junkyard. Because of its proliferation, that changed the whole idea of the junkyard, but there was always a junkyard there. That directly applies to my position. I bought a house in 1971. I've been in this town almost 50 years. That bridge was one of the reasons I bought the house, because it made exit much, much faster. You could get over to 102, Route 14, Rockland Road, and it was always there. There were 2 ways out of my house. I have not really complained since it's been closed in 2012. However, on March 2nd, it really hit me how vulnerable, how susceptible I am living in a dead-end street with no other way out. A tree crossed the road. I couldn't get home. I had to go to a friend's house in Illinois. I couldn't get in to get my medicine that I desperately need, having fought breast cancer twice. I need this stuff. I couldn't get in. The tree effectively closed me off. And I thought, how much worse would it be if I was stranded in the house and not been able to get out or to get somebody to help? I wrote a whole bunch of things about saying, that I've been a paying resident for 50 years. I haven't been a passive citizen. I've been on the Preservation Board, Tax Board of Review, the Fostering Arts, the library. I've been a candidate for town council and for your Senate. I've worked in the town, working for 28 years as a teacher at Pontiac Middle School. I've probably had some of your kids. I'm still subbing you. I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking for the town council to find a way to return my home, my property, to the way it was when I bought it. Hemlock Road seems like it's the stepchild of this town. Kate Randall has some ditches in it. It immediately gets filled with stone. You drove down my road the other day. There are gullies in that road that have never been filled or fixed. Guardrails were put on North Road. King Road has a bridge. What condition is that bridge in? This loop of Central Pike, Kate Randall, Hemlock, and Pontiac is listed in Ken Weber's Scenic Roads or Scenic Walks of Rhode Island. I don't know how many people walk my road, but the road is less traveled now because people don't feel as safe. That bridge, as Mrs. DeFranco can attest, is filled with graffiti. There was a couch thrown into the reservoir a couple of months ago. The kids are lighting fires on the bridge. I don't want to die in that house because you, the town, cannot protect me. I pay my taxes, I try to be a good neighbor, and all I'm asking is that you return my home to the way it was when I bought it. I have a contract with you. You, as my town, should keep me safe. And you're not. And I know that finances are hard, and I know that maybe you've got to get a little creative. The last time that bridge was fixed, they had a $30,000 grant. Maybe we should look for a grant. Maybe we should, I don't know what. But I'm begging you to find a way to help me.
Thank you, Mrs. Fennessy. Yes.
I'm in the same boat as her.
Yes,
That's
I
a whole
know.
different subject, that's state. But I don't know if she could correct me or not, but I thought Situate abandoned that.
No.
Oh, they didn't?
No.
They did not.
No,
It
they
was
wanted to,
discussed
but
already,
they didn't.
and then they did not. Mr. Law provided us with pictures of the bridge and what's going on underneath it, and there's quite a few holes. When I went down, and I've been down there several times when Mrs. Fennessy has come before us, this council and various councils, and she's right, at one point there was a couch on it, there's a lot of graffiti. The bridge had been repaired and the deck of the bridge is solid. It's the underneath that's lacking. What Mr. Law thought there would be difficulties with Providence Water, asking them to lower the water, because we would be making repairs, we would no longer be able to use the stone that's there now, we would have to put cement, it would be quite costly. I had told Mrs. Fennessy that I did not think we would be able to replace that bridge and repair it, that there's several bridges in town that are in the same shape, that they also have just one exit.
Okay, and then I proposed an alternate.
Yes,
So
you
that
did.
at least I could get out of my house. If
Currently,
you take away those big, huge blocks so that my car could go over, secure it on either end the same way it is, and give me a key, so that at least if something happened, I could get out or an ambulance could get in.
the concern that when Mrs. Fennessy and I were discussing that, one of the concerns that were brought up is that with the gates and it has a chain and a padlock there, someone could just easily cut that chain or those padlocks and then drive across, and it's not safe. Mrs. Fennessy would use it for emergency purposes only. The blocks being there is preventing others from going across that bridge. Going across that bridge could
You can't do that because you're gonna get.
liability.
There's liability,
Right.
unfortunately.
And that's what I had said to Mrs. Fennessy. I didn't think that it would be possible because somebody else would go across and the blocks are there for,
And then sue you.
and then sue us.
I'd like to add it on the council on quite a while through the years. There was actually something done on the study and prioritize the bridges we had out in town totally. And they gave them a priority. And the bridges that were listed, some are on state, some of the listings was Hemlock, Old Danielson, and the Mills, which has been removed by the state. Pine Tree, which is a DEM, the state-owned bridge. We also have a town bridge, Anthony.
Right.
And there's multiple residents that are in a situation on that road. And those were, I forgot how the priority was, but there was a list that was done, and they were given a priority on how many people live on the road, you know, rescue response time. For example, on response time to her house, the rescue, unless it's a mutual aid rescue, would be coming in the way that the bridge is now on.
Right.
Whereas in some situations, rescue personnel and stuff would be coming in on Anthony Road. It's much shorter for them to leave and go out Central Pike to go to a hospital, but that bridge is not there. So there's actually, and that's how they prioritize it. And I think Anthony Road was way higher than on the list than Hemlock. So again, I don't want to jump one bridge in front of the other. That list needs to be
dug back up, it is current, and it's about priority. Now, I'm not taking anything away from Hemlock Road and Hemlock Bridge, but I do believe that that list was compiled under John Lewis and the council with John Lewis, and that priority listed the bridges by priority.
I recall that.
So that should be revisited, and that should hold, because there were reasons why they had priorities. So I don't want to say Hemlock was the toppest priority or not, but that list was done by criteria, and a committee put together, or the facts put together of why they hit a priority. So that should be addressed. If we're going to fix bridges, you know, that list is important.
It shouldn't be if we're going to, it should be when we're going to, because it's the town's responsibility. But besides that, I was curious, you mentioned a grant. Is there such a thing we can go after now?
I don't know.
How would we find that out?
Well, you do get grants on priority also, so if you go for a grant, you've got to look at the list. And if you're gonna go for a grant, your chances of getting a grant is based on the priorities and reasons why you want that bridge replaced. So that list is very important. I'm not saying don't go for a grant, but let's just say there was a road that had no houses on it, and the bridge was out. You're not gonna repair that bridge and then take a road that has 30 houses on it. So I mean, if you're gonna go out for a grant.
Wait, but you're not.
As I was interrupted, what I'm trying to say is that list is very important on priority of bridges. I'm not saying bridges are not of a priority.
I understand.
We understand that, Gordon, thank you.
I want to know, would we go through the planner? Would we ask the planner? To about a grant for that? For those that need being done? I mean, at least it would ease my mind that we're trying to do something for these people that we owe this to.
Mr. Frank.
I thought I saw another hand up. Oh, Mrs. Fennessy had a hand up prior to.
No, I was just going to say, prioritize definitely, but you have three, 4 houses on Hemlock. You have 3 houses on Cape Randall. I mean, my taxes are as equal to somebody who's got 10 houses on a road too. I mean, we're all citizens of Foster, and you all promised
But we can't fix them all at once.
No, I know that, but I like this idea of not if, but when. I'd like to hold on for 50 years, so you've got 3 years to get this fixed.
You're gonna hold on.
Cheryl, how you get a grant is, you hire a full-time planner who gets a piece of the grants or the monies they bring into the town.
I'm all for hiring a full-time planner, but we can't.
Oh, excuse me, you can. You choose not to.
No, I don't
Right?
choose
And,
not to. I haven't voted
As
on
a
that.
group,
I haven't voted on
as
that.
a group. And we had a full-time planner, his name was Rick Grant, and he produced about $500,000 worth of grant monies when he was here. Then we went to a part-time planner, and I'm not sure how much money we've produced since then. So it's up to the council to incentivize somebody to produce grants. That's how you get grants.
Thank you, Mrs. Ryder.
It would seem with the location of that bridge and the scenic quality, you could probably, go outside of the traditional bridge grant and do something. Maybe you could get, I don't know, Champlin or someone for, say, a covered bridge that would add something to that scenic area, but also it would be a different avenue to get the monies. I think you have to explore everything.
Good point. I think one of the things that we have to consider too, or 2 things, is Providence Water and Situate. Situate maintains that road minimally. I spoke with Mr. Mahoney the other day, and they maintain Montague Road minimally, yes, minimally. And Providence Water, I'm not sure how much they would like to have a scenic.
But it's
Coverage.
your road.
What, didn't Situate back off? Didn't I hear that?
Yes,
That
yes,
said?
they did.
So that being said, it's up to us to do it, right? It is in our town, right?
Yes, it is.
Material Road.
Yes, Mr. Sheldon.
I don't know if anybody knows, but how long have these bridges been out?
Forever.
Long time.
1998. It was fixed in 2002. It was closed again in 2012.
Well, that's yours, but what about these other bridges?
I don't know.
Oh, the other ones, Anderson Road,
I mean, I know that one, that's on
that's
Old
been
Daniels.
out for ages.
And is that one of the criteria they look at when they try to determine priority?
I'm sorry, what?
Do you think that might be one of the criteria that they look at when they look at priority?
Criteria was people rescue response, volunteers response, and getting to the hospital on going out. And I'm pretty sure, and I could be wrong, I think Anthony scored as the priority of
Yes, I think so.
by far. So again, that list is very important because if we did, and I'm not diminishing, we should fix them all. Problem is, we need to find the money, we gotta find a way of doing it, and I think we're gonna be under a very big microscope with the water supply over there doing any work.
I agree, even if we do own the road.
Right, because
It's
water
still-
supply was the ones pushing to shut down both the roads. So they are working, basically, you know, they want the roads shut down.
Right.
So they're not gonna be very polite about how we operate and work there, so we're gonna
Unless
have
they're
to.
paying the taxes on it and they're fixing the road, I think we have
That's not the point,
legitimate
that's not the point, that's not the point I'm making.
I
Sure.
No, I
agree.
understand what you're saying, Gordon, but I think that's where we gotta come from.
Fix it.
Get the list,
Okay.
we'll get the list, I think the list is very important to go
I
through.
understand that too.
So
I say we try to
I
get
have
money
two
for both.
people, I have two people with their hands raised. I don't know your name.
Jackie.
Could you,
Jackie Bauer.
okay, and your address,
So
please?
I live on Mill Road, right across there. So my question is, when they closed the bridge, was there a wait that the engineer or whoever it was that determined the bridge was unsafe? Like, could it be reopened with a weight restriction? Like they have
You
on,
can see, if you
on
can see the under,
Look at the pictures
Yeah,
after you had a chance.
I'm at the bridge all the time, I've just actually never gone under it.
The
we
head
have
walls,
pictures, don't go under it, just look
the
at.
head walls are old field stone, it's not concrete head walls, it wouldn't even come close to
So
the.
the weight restriction wouldn't be an option.
Right.
Okay.
And the state did remove Anthony Road Bridge on the state dime. So again, if we rebuilt Anthony Road Bridge, we would have had to remove the bridge before we put it in. But the state actually, when they did Old Danielson Pike, they threw in Anthony Road and they removed that bridge at their state dime versus the town dime. So that one's already gone. But again, this one would have to be dismantled and rebuilt. And again, Anthony Road's already halfway there.
And it's interesting, Anthony Road, from what I recall, the residents that live there did not want the bridge open.
It's half a dozen, I've got some that come that want it open.
See, I hear a lot of people that say, no, we don't want it open, so.
Walter May doesn't
Yes,
want it.
he's one of them. Chief.
Just to answer Mr. Sheldon's question about Anthony Road and Anthony Road being the number one on that priority, I've served my whole career and never had the pleasure of driving over the Anthony Road Bridge. Never one on the priority
Used to
list.
be a nice cut through for me. Yeah, I used to like that cut through, so.
Can I add one more thing?
Yes.
The reason that Hemlock Bridge is very important is because you can get from 102.14 very quickly over to 94. The state police used to use it all the time. It was patrolled all the time by the city of Providence. If the city of Providence thinks that by abandoning or not having a patrol makes their water supply safer, their couches go in, anything could go in when it's not patrolled. So that bridge is essential, I think, to keeping the water supply pure as it is, and also for police and whatever.
So, what I'm hearing, please, council members, correct me if I'm wrong, this is a possible future agenda item. We're going to look at the priority bridge list, talk to the planner about any possibility of any grants.
Yes. I don't think any votes are needed.
Okay,
No.
thank you. Thank you, Maggie. Moving on to the National Grid, we have a request for poll petitions.
Make a motion to accept the poll petition by both Verizon and the National Grid
On South Kennelly Road, joint pole location, here with marked, plan file marked 257-62905 dated 2/26/2018, and signed by both entities.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on to the North Atlantic Region Outer Continental Shelf Oil and Gas Leasing Resolution. This was brought on. Do we have,
Somebody over the drilling operation?
do we have a motion?
I will make a motion to approve the resolution in opposition of the proposed inclusion of the North Atlantic region in 2019-2004 National Outer Continental Shelf Oil and Gas Leasing Program.
Second.
Discussion.
Well, we value our shell fishing grounds, and I grew up bull raking, quahogging, and I think while I am pro-oil, if to some extent, and natural energy keeping the cost down, I think at its cost, I think damage in our intercoastal resources is not an even trade.
Further discussion?
I'm sorry, I didn't get to read this, I didn't get.
Oh, do you want to take a moment?
No, I don't really know where it's going.
I have some reservations in regards to it. I understand what you're saying, Gordon. I think the likelihood of them drilling out there is slim. That's about all I've got to say about it.
I think it's a battle way above us.
Yes, I agree.
I read enough that I get it, I'm against it too.
And this is the original, this is still,
Yes, you design.
any further discussion? I kind of interrupted the original, are you done? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Okay, we have future agenda items. White's Auto Parts is May 24th, that's in 60 days, or as close to 60 days. The police site survey bid award is April 12th. I believe, they're not sure if they're going to have a quorum. The police committee is meeting on the 28th, and they're not sure if they're going to have a quorum to review, the 27th, to review that. So we'll be looking forward to that. We also have
This is the
the
12th.
April 12th is when our meeting would be. They're reviewing it and then giving us recommendations, and then we're going to make a decision on the 12th. And I just have the dates there to remind me.
The meeting when?
Tuesday night,
6 o'clock here.
and then the posting of the position, which will be on next Thursday's meeting. Anything else that you would like on?
Schultz, well discussed.
That's executive session?
Yep.
Anything else?
What time is that meeting? What time is that?
The 27th. Anything else? No? We'll adjourn to executive session, do you have that?
Yep, I move to go into executive closed session pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42-42-4 for the reasons stated in Rhode Island General Laws 42-46-5. A2, litigation, industrial power wireless LLC versus the town of Foster. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?